Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. Welcome to the Brother Henry and You Show. I am your host, Henry Harris. It's such a delight that you've tuned in to watch today's show. We have a wonderful show for you today. Today I'm interviewing Sarah Bereza, and she wrote the book called Professional Christian, Being Fully Yourself in the Spotlight of Public Ministry. Sarah has a PhD and certificate in feminist theory from Duke University. Her research focuses on American Christianity and what people believe about music. She's also a progressive Christian and have ministered in churches for over 2 decades. And Sarah, thank you so much for taking this opportunity to be on the show today.
I'm so glad that you had me. Thank you.
Yeah,
it's great to be here. Hi, everyone.
Thank you as well. It's such an honor to have you. What inspired you to write this book?
Oh, it comes from a few different places. My whole life, I've always had this lingering question, this ongoing question of how do you be yourself when people can't see all of you, which is something all of us encounter. No one knows our whole heart except for God. And how can people really know you? And I started playing the piano 3 times a week at my Baptist church when I was 11 years old and have basically been doing church music since then. And I encountered this issue that I know I'm not the only one who's encountered. How do you show up and lead worship from your heart when you don't feel like it, or when you're tired, or when your day is just not going well, but you're supposed to be up there leading worship from your heart? And I grew up in a Baptist tradition where you weren't just there to play the music, you were there to worship and lead that with everyone else from your heart. And if you weren't, that's lying or not being true to God, not being true to your faith. But we're people. Like we get tired. We don't want to do things all the time. So what is happening there in terms of integrity, in terms of our relationship with God? And then as a grown-up, I did academic research where I was talking with vocalists who were singing in church services in the same evangelical tradition where they needed to be with their face showing that they were worshiping and that they truly believed the words that they were saying. Not just that these are words that the church believes are true, but that they personally believed that and were personally worshiping at that moment in time that they were singing. But they're people just like everyone else. They have good days and bad days and don't always feel like it. And this is like the product of that, which this ongoing question: how do you be yourself when you are in a place where people are looking at you and you're supposed to be on, and you don't have time to go back and edit? How do you do that? And I think in the ministry setting in particular is so difficult because it's not just a responsibility to the people around you, it's a responsibility to God. And there are so many difficult things with that, especially if you're a pastor.
It's almost like putting up an image.
It can be. It can be like in the worst version of it, it can be really hypocritical. I don't think it has to be like that at all. And I think you can lead with integrity, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel like it, even when you're having a bad day, even when you're doubting, which a lot of times church folk don't like to talk about doubt. But I think most of us experience doubt. I think you can still lead with integrity and still lead in your full self, even when things are not perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome. So your subtitle says, as you just mentioned, being fully yourself in the spotlight of public ministry. And as I was looking over that last night, 2 questions, it's like this would be 2 questions in one that came to my mind. How can one become fully themselves? And secondly, why is it so difficult for many people in ministry to become fully themselves in the spotlight?
Yeah. When I think the first question, how do you be fully yourself, is kind of like a lifelong goal to grow into, as I see it, growing into the image of Christ. To be fully ourselves is to be more and more and more like Christ. And that is the work of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that we can set up things in our life to make that more likely. One, just having that idea of this is something that we're constantly striving toward. And I think that we need to have really close and vulnerable relationships. I think that we need people in our lives who can be our wise counsel, who can be the listening ear, who can be the shoulder to cry on. And for people who are in congregational ministry, that doesn't mean your congregation. That means people who are really close to you and are able to support you. And I think in ministry in particular, we need to be in jobs where we can be fully ourselves, and not that's a lot harder, I think, than you might think. And sometimes people end up in a space where they think they're going to be a good fit, and then it turns out it's not a good fit. And being fully yourself when your boss doesn't have your back and you don't theologically align, and all these other things, as basically impossible, I think. And that's you got to have that foundation. I think that it is so difficult for people in ministry in particular. There are a lot of reasons, and I think some of them have to do with power. People in ministry often have relational power over the people that they're socially connected with, and the kids their children go to youth group together, and all these other things, and yet there is this power difference. And especially the case with pastors, less so for people like me who are in music, but it's still there. You have some relational power. You might have, depending on your social circle, you might be held up as like the role model, and you're pastor so-and-so. So you must be extra godly, and you must be extra special, close to God. And maybe you're a conduit to God, and God listens to you more than God listens to me. That depends on your denomination and your setting. And there's a lot of factors there. But for a lot of people in public ministry, in church ministry, and working in schools, nonprofits, they're held up as like extra special. And they're still people. People make mistakes. Exactly. People aren't perfect. People have all the difficulties as everyone else. And that's hard. And then another factor that makes ministry so difficult is that your livelihood is tied to your faith. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I'm not at all saying, oh, we should be like some denominations don't pay pastors or don't pay music ministers, whatever. I don't think that it has to be like that. It's just an obstacle to being fully yourself, and to having transparency about your faith and your own struggles without like manipulating people. But that's a hard thing to do when you're held up to be so great, and also your livelihood is tied to that. And then I didn't even think about this when I was writing the book, but I've had several people point out to me, well, Sarah, in some denominations, it's not just you, it's your children and your spouse, and they better behave too. And if your kids aren't in line, pastor so-and-so can lose their job. Teacher so-and-so can lose their job. That's a lot of pressure.
There's a lot of pressure.
That's a huge amount of pressure. Wouldn't you want to put up a facade and just, say, oh, yep, everything's perfect and fine.
Yep.
That's so tempting.
Even marriage. The things that
marriage is great. Everything is perfect. We have it all together. Nothing to see here.
And when it's like that all the time, I find that to be a little questionable too.
Yeah, but I think not all, but some denominations and faith traditions make it very difficult for people to be even a little bit vulnerable about having a hard time. Even in public things like, my mother died, or I'm going through a cancer treatment. And some traditions make it so that you just need to be like, well, praise God for leading me through this trial, and I've already been delivered from the difficulty. But we're people, and it takes us a while. Yes,
it does. And thank you for answering that. That was very awesome. My next question is, what is your overall theme like in this book? What is your overall message you're trying to convey?
Yeah, I think that the basic kernel is that we love God and we love our neighbor more by being more fully ourselves. It's not selfish to be more fully ourselves. It's not self-centered. It's not narcissistic. I mean, certainly we could be those things, but the baseline of wanting to be more fully yourself in ministry is not a narcissistic or hypocritical or even a sideline type of thing. It's so important to be fully yourself because you can love God more fully, and you can love your neighbor more fully yourself when you are more conformed to the image of Christ. When we are more like Christ, we are more fully ourselves, and then we can love people more.
Amen.
Especially in ministry.
Yeah.
But regardless, no matter what your job is, no matter what, or even if you have a job, you can more love God and more love your neighbor if you are more fully yourself.
And you know, Sarah, on my show here lately, we've been talking a whole lot. I've been sitting down with therapists from all over. We're talking about mental health. That's another thing too that saddens me to see pastors commit suicide and I don't know if the statistics are true, but they say hundreds of churches are closing like every year. And that saddens me to hear that. I think I'm not going to say the overall reason for that is pressure, but I will say I do think the spotlight has a lot to do with it, and the high expectations that is put on that one person. It becomes all about performance. You know, like you said earlier, behave a certain way, live, and they're watching you too. It's kind of sad that some people are watching and waiting for your demise and waiting for you to fail.
Yeah.
It's very awesome to be a part of a ministry in a church, whether you're in leadership or a member of a church, that just accepts you for who you are and not for what they think you should be. And I just think that's awesome. And I believe your book will help people. I just love that subtitle, being fully yourself in the spotlight of, because I'll be honest, I haven't always been that way.
Yeah, me either. It's hard. It's really hard.
Because so we pretend and we put on this facade, as you talked about earlier, or like a cover up, like this ain't who I really am, but this is what I have to present to the public. And I'm so glad that those days are over with for me. And it feels good to be authentically myself in Christ and not have to worry about all those other detachments. I mean, and not have to worry about all those other attachments that wasn't authentically me. What's your favorite chapter in your book?
Ooh, I have a chapter on authenticity that I really like. What you're saying about being at a place where you can be fully yourself makes me think about that. And then I have a chapter about corporate worship and what does it mean to be yourself in real time. And real time is something like this. We're recording this conversation and it's going to go up and it's not going to be like heavily edited. We're having this conversation right now. We said, hi, nice to see you. And we went right into this conversation, right? This is the real time, as opposed to something where like, I'm going to write a blog post and I can edit it and I can change it. And I feel like real-time ministry is particularly difficult because of the whole, but what if I don't feel like it? What if I'm dealing with a church member that really annoys me and I still got to be nice to them? How do you do that with integrity? And I think the most important thing there is to think about what I think is true, which is that we bring all of our past with us into the present. So our call into ministry, that call when you were 16 is still there right now. And all the education and preparation that we had, the rehearsal that we had last week, and the planning that we did a year ago, and God's call into this particular congregation, all of that is with us in that moment, whether or not our emotions are so happy and smiley and so right there. Because our emotions, emotions are also true, but emotions are just one part of who we are. And so is all the rest of that. So all that preparation leading us to say that church service or leading us to that conversation, everything that we're bringing with us, that's true too. And that's authentic too. That's real, as are our emotions, but emotions are not the only part of what's real.
Yes. And I want to say thank you so much, Sarah, for taking this time to come on the show.
It was my pleasure.
Talk about your book. For those that are watching, you can order her book at sarah-bereza.com. Yay! It's also at bookshops, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Target, or probably wherever books are sold.
Yeah, and local bookstores can order it for you. They won't won't have it in stock because it's
Yeah,
niche
awesome.
church book,
You
but
go to
they can
any-
order it for you.
They can go to any local
Mhm.
bookstore and go to the counter and just mention professional Kristen and with her name, of course, and you can order the book wherever books are sold. So this has been an amazing interview, and I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
We hope you have enjoyed today's program. We want to connect with you. Visit us at facebook.com/The Brother Henry and You Show, or visit us on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Henry Harris 100. We're so grateful you tuned in today and hope you have a fantastic day.